Vera Whitmore stood at the altar in a borrowed wedding dress, 18 years old and trembling, about to marry a man whose enemies filled graveyards faster than florists filled churches. Lucien Moretti's reputation arrived before he did, a mafia boss so ruthless that grown men whispered his name like a curse. She expected cruelty. She expected to be used, broken, discarded. What she didn't expect was for him to give her rules instead of orders, distance instead of demands, and a choice she never thought a man like him would offer. This is the story of a girl who thought marriage would destroy her, and the dangerous man who refused to let it. If you want to see how far a desperate bargain can turn into something real, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The church smelled like old wood and lilies that cost more than Vera's entire wardrobe. She stood in the bride's room, staring at herself in a full-length mirror that had probably reflected 100 happier women. The dress didn't fit right. It was borrowed from someone in the Moretti family, someone taller, someone who'd probably married for love instead of debt forgiveness. Vera tugged at the bodice. The lace scratched her collarbone. Her mother had tried to fix it with safety pins that morning, hands shaking so badly she'd pricked Vera's skin twice. There were still tiny blood dots on the white fabric, hidden under the veil. "You look beautiful," her mother said from the corner, voice hollow. Vera didn't answer. Beautiful wasn't the point. The point was that in 20 minutes she would walk down an aisle and legally bind herself to a man she'd met exactly once, for exactly 7 minutes, in a restaurant so expensive they didn't print prices on the menu. Her father hadn't come to help her dress. He was probably in the chapel already, sitting in the front row, pretending this was normal, pretending he hadn't sold his daughter to the most dangerous man in the city to keep his kneecaps intact. The door opened. Vera's breath caught. But it wasn't Lucien. It was a woman in her 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than Vera's father's car. She looked Vera up and down with the efficiency of someone inspecting livestock. "I'm Elena," the woman said. "I manage Mr. Moretti's household. You'll be seeing a lot of me." She pulled a small velvet box from her purse. "He sent this." Vera opened it. Inside was a wedding band, white gold, simple, no diamonds. It looked almost normal. She'd expected something ostentatious, something that screamed property of a crime lord. "He doesn't like attention," Elena said, reading her expression. "Put it on. We're starting in 10 minutes. Vera's mother made a small sound, halfway between a gasp and a sob. Elena's gaze shifted to her. "You can say goodbye now, privately." It wasn't a suggestion. Vera's mother stood, clutching her purse like a shield. She crossed the room and cupped Vera's face with both hands. Her palms were cold. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, baby." Vera wanted to say something cruel, something that would make her mother hurt the way she was hurting. But when she opened her mouth, all that came out was, "I know." Her mother kissed her forehead and left. Elena stayed. "Do you need anything?" the older woman asked. "Water? A moment alone? I need to not do this." Elena's expression didn't change. "That's not one of the options." "Then no," Vera said. "I don't need anything." "Good." Elena checked her watch. "The ceremony is brief, 15 minutes maximum. Mr. Moretti doesn't believe in long weddings. Afterward, there will be a reception. You'll shake hands, smile, and say as little as possible. Do you understand?" "I'm not stupid." "I didn't say you were. I said, do you understand?" Vera's jaw tightened. "Yes." "Then let's go." The chapel was smaller than Vera expected. Maybe 50 people, all of them strangers except for her parents in the front row. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes. Her mother was crying quietly into a handkerchief. And at the altar, standing perfectly still in a black suit that looked like it had been tailored by someone who understood violence as an art form, was Lucien Moretti. He was younger than she'd imagined, maybe early 30s. Dark hair, dark eyes, a face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so carefully blank. He watched her walk down the aisle the way a scientist might watch a lab result, interested but detached. Vera's legs felt like they were going to give out. The officiant was already talking by the time she reached the altar, some generic speech about love and commitment that made Vera want to laugh until she threw up. Lucien didn't react. He stood there, hands clasped in front of him, waiting. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, the silence was so thick Vera thought she might choke on it. Then came the vows. Lucien said his in a voice that didn't waver once. Flat, controlled, like he was signing a contract, not a marriage license. Vera repeated hers. Her voice cracked twice. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Lucien leaned in. Vera's entire body went rigid, but the kiss was brief, chaste. He pulled back almost immediately, and for just a second she thought she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not warmth, not affection. Pity, maybe. Then it was gone. The reception was held in a mansion Vera had only seen in movies. Marble floors, chandeliers that looked like they weighed more than cars, waiters in white gloves carrying trays of champagne that probably cost more per bottle than her family's monthly rent. Lucien didn't leave her side. He kept one hand on the small of her back, light but constant, guiding her through the crowd. Every time someone approached to offer congratulations, he responded with the same 3 words. Thank you. Appreciate it. He didn't introduce her, didn't explain who she was, just kept moving. Vera felt like a doll being paraded around. At one point, a man with a scar running from his eyebrow to his jaw leaned in and said something to Lucien in rapid Italian. Lucien's expression didn't change, but his hand tightened slightly on Vera's back. Later, Lucien said in English. The man glanced at Vera, then nodded and walked away. Who was that? Vera asked quietly. No one you need to worry about. That's not an answer. Lucien looked down at her. Up close, his eyes were almost black. You'll learn quickly that I don't answer questions just because they're asked. Then what's the point of me being here? To stand next to me and look like you're not terrified. Vera's cheeks burned. I'm not. You are, Lucien said. And that's fine, just don't show it to anyone else. He steered her toward a table where an older man in a navy suit was sitting alone, nursing a glass of whiskey. The man looked up as they approached, and his face split into a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Lucien, he said, congratulations, she's lovely. Thank you, Vincent. Vincent's gaze slid to Vera. Does she speak? When necessary, Lucien said before Vera could respond. Vincent laughed. Smart. Women talk too much. He raised his glass. To the happy couple. Lucien didn't toast. He just nodded and moved on. By the time the reception ended, Vera's feet were screaming in the too tight heels Elena had given her, and her face hurt from forcing smiles at people who looked at her like she was a curiosity at best and a liability at worst. Lucien led her outside, where a black car was waiting. The driver opened the door without a word. Vera climbed in, and Lucien followed. The door shut. The engine started. And suddenly, they were alone. Vera stared out the window as the city blurred past. She didn't know where they were going, didn't know what came next. All she knew was that she'd just married a man who treated her like a chess piece, and there was no way out. You did well tonight, Lucien said. Vera's head snapped toward him. What? You didn't cry, didn't make a scene. That's more than I expected. Glad I could exceed your expectations, Vera said bitterly. Lucien's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. You're angry. Of course I'm angry. Good. Angry is better than broken. Vera didn't know what to say to that. They drove for another 20 minutes before the car pulled through a set of iron gates and up a long tree-lined driveway. At the end of it was a mansion that made the reception venue look modest. 3 stories, stone facade, floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the moonlight like mirrors. The driver opened the door. Lucien stepped out first, then offered Vera his hand. She hesitated. It's your home now, Lucien said. Might as well get used to it. Vera took his hand. His grip was firm, warm. He pulled her out of the car and led her up the front steps where Elena was waiting. Your room is ready, Elena said. I'll show you up. I'll do it, Lucien said. Elena raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She stepped aside. Lucien led Vera through a sprawling foyer, up a curved staircase, and down a hallway lined with paintings that probably belonged in a museum. He stopped in front of a heavy wooden door and pushed it open. The room beyond was massive, king-sized bed with white linens, a sitting area with a fireplace, a balcony overlooking the grounds. It looked like a luxury hotel room, not a prison. This is yours, Lucien said. Vera stepped inside slowly. Where's your room? Down the hall. She turned to face him. We're not. No, Lucien said. We're not. Why? He looked at her for a long moment, and for the first time all day, his expression softened, just a little. Because I don't take what isn't given, he said, and you haven't given me anything. I gave you my name, Vera said, my whole life. Your father gave me those things, Lucien corrected. You didn't have a choice. So what? You're going to wait until I magically fall in love with you? No. Lucien stepped back into the hallway. I'm going to wait until you stop looking at me like I'm going to hurt you. That's all. He started to close the door. Wait, Vera said. He paused. What are the rules? Lucien's brow furrowed. Rules? You said earlier, back at the reception, that I'd learn quickly. So what are the rules? He considered that. Then he stepped back into the room, hands in his pockets, and leaned against the doorframe. Rule 1, he said. You don't leave the property without security, ever. Why? Because people will try to hurt you to get to me. That's not a theory. It's a fact. Vera swallowed. Okay. Rule 2, you don't talk to the press, you don't talk to strangers, you don't answer questions about me, about this house, or about anything you see or hear here. I'm not an idiot. I know. But people will try to make you think you are. They'll act friendly, they'll act concerned. Don't believe them. What's Rule 3? There is no Rule 3, Lucien said. Just those two. Follow them, and you'll be safe. And if I don't? His expression went cold again. Then I can't protect you. Vera's stomach twisted. You make it sound like I'm in danger just by being here. You are. Lucien straightened. But you were in more danger before. Your father's debts didn't just disappear. They got transferred. And the people he owed don't forgive. They collect. This marriage kept you alive, Vera. Remember that. He stepped into the hallway and pulled the door shut behind him. Vera stood there, heart pounding, staring at the place he'd been. Then she walked to the bed, sat down, and finally let herself cry. The next morning, Vera woke to sunlight streaming through the balcony doors and the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere downstairs. She sat up slowly, disoriented, until she remembered where she was. Married. To a mafia boss. In a mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. She dragged herself out of bed and found a bathroom attached to her room that was bigger than her old bedroom. There were towels already laid out, toiletries still in their packaging, and a robe hanging on a hook behind the door. Vera showered, dressed in the clothes someone, Elena probably, had hung in the closet overnight, and made her way downstairs. The house was enormous. She got lost twice before she found the kitchen, where Elena was sitting at a marble island, reading a newspaper and drinking espresso. Good morning, Elena said without looking up. Morning, Vera mumbled. There's coffee. Help yourself. Vera poured a cup and sat across from her. The silence stretched. Finally, Elena folded the newspaper and looked at her. Mr. Moretti is in meetings all day. You won't see him until tonight. Okay. You're free to explore the house, the grounds. There's a library, a gym, a pool. Stay busy. It'll help. Help with what? Elena's gaze was steady. With the fact that you're now married to a man you don't know, living in a world you don't understand, and trying very hard not to fall apart. Vera's throat tightened. I'm fine. No, you're not. But you will be. Elena stood and rinsed her cup in the sink. Give it time. She left. Vera sat there alone, staring into her coffee, wondering how much time it would take to stop feeling like a stranger in her own life. The first week passed in a blur. Lucien was gone most of the time. Meetings, business, things Vera wasn't allowed to ask about. When he was home, he was polite but distant. They ate dinner together every night, barely speaking, and then he'd disappear into his office or his room. Vera explored the house. She found the library, 3 floors of books she'd never have time to read. She found the gym, the pool, the wine cellar that looked like it belonged in a castle. She found rooms that were locked, and she didn't ask why. Elena checked on her daily, not hovering, just present, making sure she was eating, making sure she wasn't losing her mind. On the 8th day, Vera was sitting in the library when Lucien walked in. She looked up, startled. He was in a suit, tie slightly loosened, looking like he'd just come from something exhausting. Can I sit? He asked. Vera nodded. He sat across from her, leaning back in the chair, and rubbed his eyes. Long day? Vera asked. Long week. What do you do all day? Lucien looked at her. You really want to know? Would I ask if I didn't? He smiled faintly. Most people don't ask because they're afraid of the answer. I'm already afraid. Might as well know why. Lucien studied her for a moment, then nodded. I run businesses. Some of them are legal. Most of them aren't. I make decisions that keep people alive and put other people in the ground. I negotiate with men who would slit your throat for looking at them wrong. And I do it all while pretending to be respectable enough that the authorities don't kick my door in. Vera's pulse quickened. And you do this every day? Every day. Why? Because if I don't, someone else will, and they'll do it worse. Vera didn't know how to respond to that. Lucien leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You're adjusting better than I thought you would. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice, Vera. You just don't always like the options. That's a terrible philosophy. It's an honest one. Vera set her book down. Can I ask you something? You just did. Why did you marry me? Lucien didn't blink. Because your father owed the wrong people, and they were going to kill him. Marrying you cleared the debt and gave me an advantage. What kind of advantage? The kind that makes my enemies think twice. Vera frowned. I don't understand. You're young, innocent. You make me look stable, human, less like a monster. So I'm, what? A PR move? In a way. Vera's chest tightened. That's sick. That's survival. Lucien stood. I didn't lie to you, Vera. I told you this was business. If you were expecting romance, you married the wrong man. He walked out. Vera sat there, staring at the empty doorway, and wondered if she'd ever stop feeling like a fool. 2 weeks in, Vera started noticing things. Small things. The way Lucien always made sure she had coffee in the morning, even though he drank tea. The way he'd ask Elena to stock the pantry with foods Vera mentioned liking. The way he'd check the locks on her balcony doors every night before he went to bed, even though she never asked him to. He didn't talk to her much, but he paid attention. It was unnerving. One night, Vera couldn't sleep. She wandered downstairs and found Lucien in his office, door cracked open, surrounded by papers and half-empty glasses of whiskey. She knocked lightly. He looked up. Can't sleep? Not really. Come in. She stepped inside. The office was dark except for a single desk lamp. It smelled like leather and smoke. What are you working on? Vera asked. Nothing you need to worry about. You always say that. Because it's always true. Vera crossed her arms. You know, for someone who doesn't want me to be afraid of him, you're really bad at being reassuring. Lucien leaned back in his chair, a ghost of a smile on his lips. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Something that makes me feel less like I'm living with a stranger. We are strangers, Vera. We're married. Legally. Not actually. Vera's frustration bubbled over. Then what the hell is this? What are we doing? Lucien stood, walked around the desk, and stopped a few feet away from her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. We're surviving, he said quietly. That's all. That's not enough. It's all I've got. They stared at each other. Vera's heart was pounding. She didn't know if she wanted to scream at him or cry or... Lucien stepped back. You should get some sleep. Vera turned and left before he could see the tears in her eyes. 3 weeks in, everything changed. Vera was in the library again when Elena burst in, face pale. We need to move. Now. Vera stood. What's happening? There's been a threat. Lucien's orders. You're going to a safe house until it's handled. What kind of threat? Elena grabbed her arm. The kind that gets people killed. Move. Vera's blood went cold. She followed Elena through the house, down a back staircase, and into a garage where a black SUV was already running. The driver didn't speak. Elena shoved Vera into the back seat and climbed in after her. They were halfway down the driveway when Vera saw the flames. The front gate was on fire. 2 cars were overturned. And there were men, armed men, swarming the property. Vera's breath caught. Where's Lucien? Handling it. What if he'll be fine. You don't know that. Elena's jaw tightened. He's survived worse. The SUV crashed through a side gate and onto the main road. Vera twisted in her seat, staring back at the mansion, at the smoke rising into the night sky. And for the first time since she'd married him, she realized she didn't want Lucien Moretti to die. She wanted him to survive. Because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, he'd stopped being just a stranger. He'd started being hers. The safe house turns out to be a penthouse apartment in a building Vera had never heard of, tucked into a neighborhood where every window had bars and every door had 3 locks. Elena hustled her inside, checked every room twice, then made a phone call in clipped Italian that Vera couldn't follow. When she hung up, her face was still tight. "What's happening?" Vera asked. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Lucien's crew is handling it. The property's secured. No one got inside the main house. But the gate was a distraction." Elena poured herself a glass of water from the kitchen tap and drank it in one gulp. "They wanted to see how we'd respond, where we'd move you, who was protecting you." Vera's stomach dropped. "Me? They were after me?" "They're always after something Lucien cares about." Elena set the glass down hard. "And whether he admits it or not, you're on that list now." Vera sank onto the couch. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them between her knees to make it stop. "How long do we stay here?" "Until he says otherwise." "And if he doesn't say otherwise?" Elena's expression softened, just barely. "He will. He always does." They stayed in the penthouse for 3 days. Vera barely slept. Every sound in the hallway made her jump. Every car engine outside made her heart race. Elena tried to keep her distracted with bad television and takeout food, but nothing worked. All Vera could think about was the fire, the overturned cars, the men with guns swarming the place she'd started to think of as home. And Lucien, somewhere in the middle of it, doing things she didn't want to imagine. On the 4th morning, Elena's phone buzzed. She read the message, then looked at Vera. "We're going back." Vera stood so fast she knocked over her coffee mug. "Is he? He's fine. Get your things." The drive back felt longer than it had leaving. Vera kept her eyes on the window, watching the city thin out into estates and gated properties. When they finally turned onto the long driveway, she exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. The gate had been replaced. The burned cars were gone. The lawn looked like nothing had ever happened. But when Vera stepped out of the SUV and looked up at the house, she saw Lucien standing on the front steps, arms crossed, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Elena touched her shoulder. "Go." Vera walked toward him slowly. Her legs felt unsteady. When she reached the bottom of the steps, she stopped. "You're okay," she said. It wasn't a question, but Lucien answered anyway. "I'm okay." Elena said no one got inside. "They didn't," Vera swallowed. "She also said they were testing you, to see where you'd hide me." Lucien's jaw tightened. "That's one theory. What's yours?" He didn't answer. Instead, he came down the steps and stood in front of her, close enough that she could see the bruise forming along his cheekbone and the cut on his knuckles. "You're hurt," Vera said. "I've had worse." "That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be." Lucien glanced past her at Elena, who was still standing by the car. "Take the rest of the day. I've got her." Elena nodded and drove off. Vera looked up at him. "What happened?" "Come inside. I'll tell you what I can." They sat in his office. Lucien poured himself a drink and offered her one, but Vera shook her head. She was too wired to add alcohol to the mess in her chest. Lucien leaned against his desk, glass in hand, and sighed. 3 weeks ago, I made a deal with a crew out of Boston. They wanted access to one of my distribution channels. I said no. Apparently they didn't like that answer. So they tried to kill you. They tried to scare me. There's a difference. Doesn't feel like much of one. Lucien's mouth twitched. Fair point. What did you do to them? What I had to. Vera's stomach turned. Which means they won't be a problem anymore. He set the glass down. And neither will anyone else who thinks coming after you is a smart move. Vera stared at him. You killed them. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Lucien met her gaze, unflinching. Would you rather I let them keep trying? I'd rather you didn't have enemies in the first place. Then you married the wrong man. It was the second time he'd said that, and it stung just as much as the first. Vera stood pacing to the window. The grounds looked peaceful, deceptively so. I don't understand this world, she said quietly. You're not supposed to. Then why am I in it? Because your father put you here, and because I decided keeping you was worth the trouble. Vera turned. Worth the trouble? That's what I am? Lucien's expression didn't change. You want me to lie and say something prettier? I want you to treat me like a person instead of a chess piece. I do treat you like a person. He pushed off the desk and crossed to her. A person I'm trying very hard to keep alive. By locking me up and dragging me to safe houses every time someone looks at you wrong? Yes. Vera laughed bitterly. That's not a life. It's the only one I can give you. They stood there close enough that Vera could feel the heat coming off him, and for a moment she hated him, hated that he was right, hated that he didn't apologize for it, hated that part of her was relieved he'd come out of the attack alive. I was scared, she admitted, voice cracking. When Elena said there was a threat, I thought... She stopped, shaking her head. It doesn't matter. It does. Lucien's voice was quieter now. What did you think? That I'd never see you again. Something shifted in his expression. Not softness exactly, but close. I'm harder to kill than I look, he said. That's still not comforting. This time, he almost smiled. Over the next 2 weeks, things changed. Subtle things. Lucien started coming home earlier. He'd find Vera in the library or by the pool and sit with her, not saying much, just there. They'd eat dinner together, and instead of silence, there'd be small talk. He'd ask about her day, she'd ask about his, and he'd give her half answers that were better than nothing. One night he found her in the kitchen at midnight, stress-eating ice cream straight from the container. Can't sleep? He asked. Vera nearly dropped the spoon. You have got to stop sneaking up on me. I wasn't sneaking. You were distracted. He opened the fridge and pulled out a beer. What's on your mind? Nothing. Liar, Vera sighed. I called my mom today. Lucien leaned against the counter. How'd that go? She cried, asked if I was okay, asked if you were treating me well. What did you tell her? That I was fine, that you were fair. Fair, Lucien repeated. That's one way to put it. What would you call it? He took a swig of beer, thinking. Functional. Vera snorted. You're terrible at this. At what? Being a husband. I never said I'd be good at it. He set the bottle down. Did you tell her the truth about the attack? No, she'd lose her mind. Smart. She wants to visit. Lucien's expression hardened. No. I figured you'd say that. It's not safe, Vera. Not for her. Not for you. So when is it safe? Ever? I don't know. Vera set the ice cream down. That's a horrible answer. It's an honest one. She hated how often he said that, hated that it was true. I miss them, she said quietly. Even my dad, as much as I want to hate him. I miss having people who knew me before all this. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You can call her whenever you want. Just don't tell her where you are, and don't make plans. That's it? That's all I get? For now, Vera wanted to argue, wanted to scream, but she was too tired. Okay, she said. Lucien picked up his beer and started to leave. Then he paused in the doorway. For what it's worth, he said, not looking at her, I'm glad you're here. He left before she could respond. Vera stood there, staring at the empty doorway, heart doing something complicated in her chest. The next week, Lucien had to leave town for business. He didn't tell Vera where he was going or for how long, just that Elena would be in charge and that she needed to follow the rules. Don't leave the property, he said the morning he left, standing in the foyer with a bag slung over his shoulder. Don't answer the door. Don't talk to anyone you don't recognize. I know the rules, Vera said. I'm serious. So am I. He studied her face like he was trying to memorize it. Then he nodded and left. Vera watched the car disappear down the driveway and felt the house go quiet in a way that made her uneasy. For 3 days, everything was fine. Vera read, swam, avoided thinking about where Lucien was or what he was doing. Elena checked in twice a day, and the security team patrolled the grounds like always. On the fourth day, a package arrived. Elena brought it to Vera in the library, frowning. "This came for you." Vera looked at the box, plain brown cardboard, no return address. "I didn't order anything." "I know. That's why I'm concerned." Elena opened it carefully, like it might explode. Inside was a single photograph. Vera's stomach dropped. It was a picture of her, taken recently. She was sitting by the pool in the blue swimsuit she'd worn 2 days ago, reading a book, completely unaware. Someone had been on the property. Someone had been watching. Elena's face went pale. She pulled out her phone and dialed. "We have a problem," she said when someone answered. "No, now. She needs to see this." 20 minutes later, Lucien's second in command, a man named Marco, who Vera had only met once, arrived at the house. He looked at the photo, swore in Italian, and immediately started barking orders at the security team. "Where's Lucien?" Vera asked. "On his way back," Marco said. "He'll be here by tonight." "Who sent this?" Marco didn't answer. He just looked at Elena, and the expression they shared made Vera's blood run cold. Lucien arrived just after sunset, and the first thing he did was find Vera. She was in her room, sitting on the bed, staring at nothing. He didn't knock, just walked in and shut the door behind him. "You okay?" he asked. Vera laughed, sharp and humorless. "No." He crossed the room and sat next to her, close enough that their knees almost touched. He smelled like airport coffee and exhaustion. "Marco showed me the photo," he said. "Great. So you know someone was here, watching me. And your security didn't stop them. They didn't get close enough to hurt you. They got close enough to take a picture." Lucien's jaw tightened. "I know, and I'm handling it." "How? By locking me up tighter, by putting more guards outside my door? If that's what it takes." Vera turned to face him. "I can't live like this. You don't have a choice." "Stop saying that." Her voice cracked. "Stop acting like I'm just something you have to protect and manage. I'm a person, Lucien. I have limits." "I know you're a person." "Then treat me like one." He stared at her, something raw flickering across his face. Then he said, "If I treated you like a person, I'd tell you the truth." "What truth?" "That I'm terrified." His voice was low, strained. "That every time I leave this house, I'm convinced I'll come back and find out someone got to you. That the only reason I sleep at all is because I know Elena and Marco would die before they let anyone through that door. And that every single day I regret dragging you into this." Vera's breath caught. "But I can't let you go," Lucien continued, "because if I do, you'll be a target anyway. And at least here I can protect you." "Out there?" He shook his head. "You wouldn't last a week." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." He looked at her, eyes dark and full of something Vera couldn't name. "You want the truth? Here it is. You're the only good thing in my life right now, and I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone take that away from me." Vera's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "I do." They stared at each other. The air between them felt electric, dangerous. And then Lucien stood and walked out. Vera sat there, shaking, wondering when exactly she'd stopped being afraid of him and started being afraid for him. The next morning, Lucien doubled the security. Guards at every entrance, cameras on every corner of the property. Vera couldn't take 3 steps without someone watching. It should have made her feel safer. Instead, it made her feel like a prisoner. She found Lucien in his office that afternoon, buried in paperwork. "This is too much," she said. He didn't look up. "It's necessary." "It's suffocating." "It's temporary." "You keep saying that." "But it's been a month, Lucien. When does temporary end?" He set his pen down and finally met her gaze. "When I know you're safe." "And when will that be?" "I don't know." Vera's frustration boiled over. "Then what's the point? What are we even doing here? Surviving. That's not enough. It's all I've got." Lucien's voice rose for the first time since she'd known him. He stood, shoving his chair back. "You want more? You want romance and safety and a normal life? I can't give you that. I tried to tell you that from the beginning. I'm not asking for romance, I'm asking for honesty. I've been nothing but honest with you. No, you've been careful. There's a difference. Lucien rounded the desk, stopping a few feet away from her. What do you want from me, Vera? I want you to stop treating me like I'm made of glass. You're 18 years old. You've been in this world for 5 weeks. Forgive me for trying to keep you alive long enough to see 19. I'm stronger than you think. I know you are. His voice dropped. That's what scares me. Vera's breath hitched. Why? Because the stronger you get, the more you'll see, and the more you see, the harder it'll be to pretend I'm anything other than what I am. Which is a killer. He said it flatly, without emotion. A man who solves problems with violence. A man who's destroyed more lives than he's saved. You want honesty? There it is. Vera stepped closer. You think I don't already know that? Knowing and accepting are different things. Maybe I've already accepted it. Lucien's expression cracked just for a second. Then he shook his head and turned away. You shouldn't, he said quietly. But Vera didn't move, didn't leave. Because somewhere between the fear and the anger and the suffocating security, something had shifted. She didn't just want to survive anymore, she wanted to understand him. And that terrified her more than anything else. That night, Vera couldn't sleep again. She wandered downstairs and found Lucien on the back terrace, smoking a cigarette and staring out at the dark grounds. I didn't know you smoked, she said. He glanced at her. I don't, usually. Bad day? Bad month? Vera sat in the chair next to him. The night air was cool, almost cold. She wrapped her arms around herself. Lucien noticed. He shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over her shoulders without a word. Thanks, she said. He nodded. They sat in silence for a while. Then Vera said, Can I ask you something? You're going to anyway. Do you regret it? Marrying me? Lucien took a long drag from the cigarette, then exhaled slowly. No. Even with all the trouble, especially with the trouble. Vera frowned. That doesn't make sense. It does if you understand what my life was like before. He stubbed out the cigarette. I was efficient, focused. I didn't waste time on things that didn't serve a purpose, and I sure as hell didn't let anyone get close. And now? Now I have someone who looks at me like I'm human instead of a monster, even when I don't deserve it. Vera's chest tightened. You're not a monster. You don't know what I've done. I know enough. Lucien turned to face her. Do you? Do you know how many people I've killed? How many families I've ruined? How many lines I've crossed just to stay on top? No, but I know you didn't have to marry me. You could have let my father deal with his own mess. And you didn't. That wasn't kindness, Vera. That was strategy. Maybe it started that way, but it's not anymore. He looked at her for a long moment, and Vera saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Doubt. You should go inside, he said quietly. It's cold. But Vera didn't move. She stayed right there, wrapped in his jacket, refusing to let him shut her out. I'm not afraid of you, she said. You should be. Well, I'm not. Lucien stood and walked to the edge of the terrace, gripping the railing. His knuckles went white. You will be, he said. Eventually. And then he walked inside, leaving her alone in the dark. But Vera didn't feel alone. She felt something else entirely. Something dangerous, something real. The photograph changed everything. Not because of what it showed, but because of what it proved. Someone had breached Lucien's carefully constructed fortress, and they'd done it to send a message. Vera wasn't just a wife anymore. She was a target. Within 48 hours, Lucien had fired half his security team and brought in new people. Men with hard faces and harder reputations. They didn't make small talk. They didn't smile. They just watched, constantly, like hawks circling prey. Vera hated it. She hated the way they followed her from room to room, hated the way they stood outside her bedroom door at night, hated the way Lucien had turned the house into a military compound because someone had gotten too close. But more than that, she hated the look on his face when he thought she wasn't watching, tight, controlled, like he was one bad report away from losing it completely. A week after the photo arrived, Vera found him in the gym at 3 a.m, beating the hell out of a punching bag. His knuckles were raw, bleeding through the tape he'd wrapped around them. Sweat dripped down his face and back, and he didn't stop when she walked in. "You're going to hurt yourself," she said. Lucien landed another punch. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "I've bled worse," Vera crossed her arms. "That's becoming your favorite phrase." He finally stopped, chest heaving, and turned to look at her. His eyes were dark, wild in a way she'd never seen. "What are you doing up?" he asked. "Couldn't sleep, you?" "Same." "Liar. You haven't slept in days." Lucien grabbed a towel and wiped his face. "How would you know?" "Because I hear you pacing. Every night, up and down the hallway like you're trying to walk off whatever's eating you." He didn't deny it, just tossed the towel aside and started unwrapping the tape from his hands. The knuckles underneath were split, bruised purple. Vera walked over and took his hand before he could pull away. "You need to clean this." "It's fine." "It's not." She led him to the bench and made him sit. There was a first aid kit mounted on the wall. Of course there was. And she pulled it down, rummaging through until she found antiseptic and gauze. Lucien watched her, expression unreadable. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I know." She dabbed antiseptic on the worst of the cuts. He didn't flinch, didn't make a sound, even though she knew it had to sting. "Why are you being nice to me?" he asked quietly. Vera looked up. "Why wouldn't I be?" "Because I've made your life hell." "You've made it complicated. That's not the same thing." "It's close enough." She finished wrapping his right hand and moved to the left. "Can I ask you something? When has that ever stopped you?" "Who do you think sent the photo?" Lucien's jaw tightened. "I have theories." "Care to share?" "No?" "Why not?" "Because if I'm right, you'll be more scared than you already are. And if I'm wrong, I'll have wasted energy worrying you for nothing." Vera tied off the gauze and sat back. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you're scared, and you don't know how to deal with it, so you're beating the shit out of inanimate objects and pretending that's a solution." Lucien stared at her. Then, to her surprise, he laughed. It was short, bitter, but real. "You're not wrong," he said. "I'm rarely wrong." Cocky. Observant. He looked down at his wrapped hands, flexing his fingers. "I've spent 15 years building this empire. 15 years making sure no one could touch me. And then you show up, and suddenly there's a crack in the armor. I didn't ask to be a crack." "I know, but you are." He met her gaze. "And the worst part is, I don't want to fix it." Vera's heart did something complicated. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm in over my head." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor shifted, went cold, sharp, dangerous. "What is it?" Vera asked. "I have to go." "Now? It's 4 a.m. Now." He stood, already heading for the door. "Lucien." He stopped, turned. "Stay inside, don't go near the windows, and if anything feels wrong, you find Marco or Elena immediately. Understand?" "You're scaring me." "Good, be scared. It'll keep you sharp." And then he was gone. Vera sat there on this bench, staring at the first aid kit, feeling the weight of whatever was happening pressed down on her chest like a stone. Lucien didn't come back for 2 days. Elena wouldn't tell Vera where he was, only that he was handling business and that she needed to trust him. Marco was even less helpful, just grunting noncommittal answers whenever Vera tried to ask questions. By the second night, Vera was ready to lose her mind. She was in the library pretending to read when Elena found her. "He's back," Elena said. Vera was on her feet before Elena finished the sentence. "Where is he?" "His office. But Vera," Elena caught her arm. "Give him space. Whatever happened out there, it wasn't good." Vera pulled free and headed for the office anyway. She found him standing at the window, still in the same clothes he'd left in, staring out at the grounds like he was seeing something else entirely. There was blood on his sleeve. Not his, she hoped. "You're back," she said. He didn't turn. "I am." "Are you okay?" "Define okay." Vera stepped into the room and shut the door behind her. "Did you find who sent the photo?" "Yes." "And?" "And they're not a problem anymore." The way he said it made her stomach twist. "Lucien, don't ask me for details, Vera. You don't want them." "Maybe I do." He finally turned to face her, and the look in his eyes stopped her cold. Empty. Flat. like he'd shut down every part of himself that felt anything. "No," he said, "you don't." They stared at each other across the room. Vera wanted to push, wanted to demand answers, but something in his expression told her that if she did, he'd shut her out completely. So instead, she said, "Are you safe now?" "Am I?" "Safer than we were." "That's not a yes. It's the best I can give you." Vera crossed the room and stood in front of him. Up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "When's the last time you slept?" she asked. "I don't remember." "When's the last time you ate?" He didn't answer. Vera sighed. "Come on." "Where?" "Kitchen. You're going to eat something, and then you're going to sleep, even if I have to knock you out myself." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "You think you could?" "I'm scrappy, don't test me." This time he actually laughed. It was tired, rough around the edges, but real. "All right," he said. "Lead the way." They ended up in the kitchen at midnight, Vera scrambling eggs while Lucien sat at the island, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "I didn't know you could cook," he said. "There's a lot you don't know about me." "Fair point." She slid a plate in front of him. "Eat." He picked up a fork, took a bite, and nodded. "Not bad." High praise from a man who probably has a Michelin star chef on speed dial. "I do, actually, but this is better." Liar. "I'm serious. It tastes like someone actually cared whether I ate it or not." Vera's throat tightened. She turned back to the stove, scraping the pan clean to avoid looking at him. "You know," Lucien said after a moment, "you didn't have to do this." "Do what?" "Take care of me. I'm not your responsibility. You're my husband. Legally, you kind of are." "That's just paperwork." Vera set the pan down and faced him. "Is it?" Lucien held her gaze. "I don't know anymore." The air between them felt heavy, charged. Vera's pulse kicked up. "What changed?" she asked quietly. "You did. Or maybe I did. I can't tell the difference anymore." He set his fork down. "All I know is that a month ago, you were a contract. A way to clear a debt and stabilize my position. And now what? Now you're the first thing I think about when I wake up, and the last thing I think about before I pass out. Now I'm making decisions based on keeping you safe instead of what's best for business. Now I'm terrified that one day I'll slip up and you'll pay the price for it." Vera's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Lucien, I'm not asking you for anything," he said. "I just need you to know that this stopped being fake a long time ago. At least for me." She didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to process the fact that the man who'd kept her at arm's length for weeks was suddenly laying himself bare in the middle of his kitchen at midnight. So she did the only thing that made sense. She crossed to him, took his face in her hands, and kissed him. Lucien went completely still. For a second, Vera thought she'd made a horrible mistake. Then his hands came up to her waist, pulling her closer, and he kissed her back like he'd been waiting his entire life for permission. It wasn't soft, wasn't gentle. It was desperate and messy and real. And when they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "That was," Lucien started. "Don't," Vera said. "Don't analyze it. Don't apologize. Just let it be what it is." He searched her face. "And what is it?" "I don't know yet, but I want to find out." Lucien's hands tightened on her waist. "This is a bad idea." "Probably. You're 18. I'm twice your age. I've done things that would make you sick if you knew the details." "I don't care." "You should." "Well, I don't?" Vera pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "I'm not some naive kid who doesn't know what she's getting into. I see you, Lucien. All of you. The good, the bad, the terrifying. And I'm still standing here." He looked at her like she was something fragile and dangerous all at once. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe, but that's my choice to make, not yours." For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he pulled her back in and kissed her again, slower this time, like he was trying to memorize the shape of her mouth, the taste of her, the way she fit against him. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "You're going to ruin me," he whispered. "Good," Vera said. "You've already ruined me." They stood there in the kitchen, wrapped around each other, and for the first time since the wedding, Vera felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The next morning, everything was different. Not in obvious ways. Lucien still had meetings, Vera still had her routines, the security team still hovered like shadows. But there was a shift, a current running beneath the surface that changed the way they looked at each other, the way they moved around each other. Elena noticed immediately. She cornered Vera in the hallway after breakfast, eyes sharp. What happened? What do you mean? Don't play dumb. You and Lucien. Something changed. Vera felt her cheeks heat. I don't know what you're talking about. You're a terrible liar. Elena crossed her arms. Did he? No, nothing like that. We just talked. Talked. Yes, talked. Elena studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Be careful, Vera. Of what? Of falling for a man who doesn't know how to be loved without destroying it. The words hit harder than Vera expected. You think he'll hurt me? I think he'll try not to, but Lucien spent his entire adult life building walls, and you're asking him to tear them down. That's not going to be clean, or easy, or safe. I'm not asking him to be someone he's not. No, you're asking him to be someone he's forgotten how to be, and that's scarier. Vera didn't have an answer for that. That night, Lucien found her on the terrace again. He handed her a glass of wine and sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Elena cornered you today, he said. It wasn't a question. How did you know? Because she cornered me too, told me if I hurt you, she'd poison my coffee. Vera snorted. She would too. I know. I believe her. He took a sip of his own wine. She's not wrong, you know. About what? About me being bad for you. Vera turned to face him. I don't remember asking for your opinion on what's good for me. Vera, no. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to kiss me like that and then turn around and tell me it was a mistake. I didn't say it was a mistake. Then what are you saying? Lucien set his glass down and looked at her, really looked at her. I'm saying that I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with someone without putting them in danger. I don't know how to let you in without showing you things that'll make you run. And I sure as hell don't know how to love someone without fucking it up. Vera's breath caught. Who said anything about love? I did, just now. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Lucien, I'm not asking you to say it back. I'm not even sure I should be saying it at all. But you said you wanted honesty, so here it is. I'm falling for you, Vera, and it scares the hell out of me. Vera didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so she did neither. She just took his face in her hands and said, Then let's be scared together. He kissed her, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. Just the two of them, tangled up in something neither of them fully understood, but both of them were willing to risk everything for. 3 days later, the scandal broke. Vera was in the library when Marco burst in, face pale. Turn on the news. She grabbed the remote and flipped to the first news channel she found. Her stomach dropped. There, plastered across the screen, was a photo of their marriage certificate, and beneath it, a headline that made her blood run cold. Mafia Boss. Lucien Moretti marries teenage bride in secret ceremony. Was it love or leverage? Oh my God, Vera whispered. The reporter was already tearing into it, speculating about whether Vera had been coerced, whether her family had been paid off, whether the marriage was even legal. They showed pictures of her, old photos from her social media, photos of her parents' house, photos of her walking the grounds of Lucien's estate with security flanking her like she was a prisoner. Marco was on the phone, barking orders in Italian. Elena appeared in the doorway, face tight. Where's Lucien? Vera asked. On his way back, he saw it. How bad is this? Elena didn't answer, which was answer enough. Within the hour, the house was swarming. Lawyers, PR people, members of Lucien's inner circle all talking over each other, trying to spin the story, trying to contain the damage. And at the center of it all was Lucien, standing in his office, jaw clenched, listening to everyone tell him how screwed he was. Vera watched from the doorway. He hadn't looked at her once since he'd gotten home. Finally, he held up a hand. Everyone out. The room cleared, slowly, reluctantly. Vera stayed. When the door shut, Lucien turned to her. His expression was unreadable. Are you okay? He asked. Shouldn't I be asking you that? I've been through worse scandals. You haven't. Vera stepped into the room. Who leaked it? I don't know. Yet. But you'll find out. Yes. And then what? Lucien's eyes went hard. Then I'll handle it. Vera crossed her arms. Everyone out there thinks I'm your victim. I know. They think you bought me, coerced me, trapped me. I know. And what are you going to do about it? Lucien looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since the news broke, she saw the cracks in his armor. I'm going to let you go, he said quietly. Vera's heart stopped. What? This marriage, it's destroying you. Your reputation, your safety, your future, and I won't let that happen. You don't get to make that choice. Yes, I do. I'm ending this. I'll dissolve the marriage, pay your family's debts outright, set you up somewhere safe where no one will bother you. You'll be free. I don't want to be free. Vera, I want to stay. Lucien's composure cracked. You don't understand what you're saying. Yes, I do. I'm saying that I don't care what the media thinks. I don't care what your enemies think. I care about what's real. And this, us, this is real. It'll destroy you. Then let it. Vera stepped closer. You told me you were falling for me. Was that a lie? No. Then stop trying to protect me from something I've already chosen. Lucien stared at her, and Vera saw the exact moment he broke, saw the walls he'd built come crashing down. If you stay, he said, voice rough, there's no going back. You'll be tied to me, to this life, forever. I know. They'll come after you, use you, try to break you. Let them try. He reached for her, pulled her close. You're insane. Probably. You're going to regret this. I doubt it. And then he kissed her, hard and desperate, like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. If we're doing this, he said, we're doing it my way. No more hiding, no more pretending this is just business. We face this together, publicly. Vera's heart was racing. What does that mean? It means tomorrow we're holding a press conference, and you're going to stand next to me and tell the world that you chose this, that you chose me. Lucien, and if you can't do that, if you have even a shred of doubt, then you walk away now, because once we do this, there's no taking it back. Vera looked up at him, at the man who'd terrified her, protected her, challenged her, and somehow made her feel more alive than she'd ever been. I'm not walking away, she said. Lucien's grip tightened on her waist. Then God help us both. The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. Vera had 14 hours to prepare, and she spent most of them trying not to throw up. Elena brought her breakfast at 7, took one look at the untouched tray from the night before, and sighed. You need to eat. I can't. You're going to stand in front of 50 reporters and a dozen cameras in 7 hours. You need fuel. I need a miracle. Elena sat on the edge of the bed. You're doing the right thing, am I? Because it feels like I'm about to ruin what's left of my life on national television. Your life was already ruined the second your father signed those papers. At least now you're choosing how the story ends. Vera looked at her. Do you think people will believe me when I say I chose this? Elena's expression softened. Does it matter? Of course it matters. Why? Because strangers on the internet will have opinions? They already do. They'll always have opinions. The only people whose beliefs matter are yours and Lucien's. Vera picked at the edge of the blanket. What if I mess this up? What if I say the wrong thing and make everything worse? Then Lucien will handle it. That's what he does. He shouldn't have to handle my mistakes. You're married. That's literally the deal. You handle each other's mistakes. Elena stood and smoothed her skirt. Now eat, shower, and meet me in the sitting room at noon. We need to go over what you're going to wear. Does it matter what I wear? Everything matters, especially today. By 11, Vera was dressed in a simple navy dress that Elena had picked out. Modest, classic, nothing that screamed trophy wife or victim. Her hair was pulled back, minimal makeup, no jewelry except the wedding band Lucien had given her. She looked like a normal person, which, she supposed, was the point. Lucien found her in the sitting room, staring at her reflection in the window. He was in a charcoal suit, no tie, looking calm in a way that made Vera want to scream. "You okay?" he asked. "No, you?" "I've been better." Vera turned to face him. "Are you sure about this?" "Are you?" I asked first. Lucien crossed the room and took her hands. His grip was steady, warm, grounding. "I'm sure that I don't want to do this without you. Everything else we'll figure out as we go." "That's not reassuring. It's honest." Vera let out a shaky breath. "What if they hate me?" "Some of them will." "What if they think I'm lying?" "Some of them will." "What if—" "Vera." He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "None of that matters. The only thing that matters is that you walk out there and tell the truth. Your truth. Not what they want to hear, not what makes the story cleaner, just what's real." "And what is real?" "That you're here because you want to be. That this marriage stopped being a contract the second you decided it was worth fighting for. And that anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me." Vera's throat tightened. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple. People just don't like simple when it doesn't fit their narrative." He kissed her forehead, then stepped back. "Come on. They're ready for us." The press conference was held in a hotel ballroom downtown, neutral territory that Lucien's lawyers had insisted on. When Vera walked in, the room was already packed, reporters jammed shoulder to shoulder, cameras on tripods lining the back wall, photographers crouched in the aisles like predators waiting to pounce. Vera's stomach dropped. Lucien's hand found the small of her back, steadying her. "Breathe." "I'm trying." They walked to the front of the room where a long table had been set up with microphones and water glasses. Lucien's lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Rebecca, was already seated. She nodded at them as they sat down. The room quieted. Rebecca leaned into her microphone. "Thank you all for coming. Mr. Moretti and Mrs. Moretti have agreed to make a brief statement and answer a limited number of questions. Please hold all questions until the end." She nodded at Lucien. He leaned forward, expression neutral, voice steady. 2 months ago, I married Vera Whitmore. The circumstances of our marriage have recently become public, and with that has come a significant amount of speculation and misinformation. So, let me be clear. Vera and I entered into this marriage as a business arrangement. Her family was in debt. I had the means to resolve that debt. A marriage was mutually beneficial. He paused, letting that sink in. But what started as a transaction became something else. Somewhere between the paperwork and the present, Vera stopped being an obligation and became a partner, a choice. My choice, and hers. So yes, our marriage began unconventionally, but it is real, it is legal, and it is no one's business but ours. He sat back. The room erupted. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, chaos barely contained by Rebecca's sharp voice cutting through the noise. "One at a time, please." A woman in the front row raised her hand. Rebecca pointed at her. "Mr. Moretti, are you saying that your wife chose to marry you or that she's choosing to stay now that the marriage is public?" "Both," Lucien said flatly. "Can we hear from Mrs. Moretti?" All eyes turned to Vera. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought the microphone might pick it up. She glanced at Lucien. He gave her the smallest nod. Vera leaned forward. "I married Lucien because my father made a deal I didn't have a say in," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "And yes, at first I was terrified. I didn't know him. I didn't understand his world. I thought I was being handed over to someone who would treat me like property." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But that's not what happened. Lucien gave me space. He gave me rules that kept me safe. He gave me the option to leave more than once, and I didn't take it. Because somewhere along the way, I realized that this marriage, however it started, was giving me something I didn't expect. A partner. Someone who saw me as more than a burden or a bargain. And that's why I'm here. Not because I have to be, because I want to be." The room was silent for a beat. Then the chaos started again. Another reporter, this time a man in the back. "Mrs. Moretti, are you aware of your husband's alleged criminal activities?" Vera's pulse spiked. Lucien's hand tightened on the table, but his expression didn't change. "I'm aware," Vera said carefully, "that my husband operates in a world I don't fully understand. And I'm aware that people have opinions about that. But I also know that he's never lied to me. He's never pretended to be something he's not. And he's protected me when he didn't have to. So you're condoning his actions. I'm saying that I'm not here to judge him. I'm here to stand beside him. Lucien's jaw ticked. It was the only sign that her words had landed. Another question. Mr. Moretti, there are reports that your marriage contract included financial compensation for the bride's family. Can you confirm? Yes, Lucien said. Her father's debts were settled as part of the arrangement. And you don't see that as coercion? I see it as solving a problem. Vera's family was in danger. I removed that danger. If that makes me a villain in your eyes, so be it. Mrs. Moretti, do you feel like you were sold? Vera's stomach twisted. She met the reporter's gaze head on. I felt like I was trapped. My father made a choice I couldn't undo. But Lucien didn't treat me like property. He treated me like a person, and that's the difference. More questions. Faster now, overlapping. Are you in love with him? Mrs. Moretti, do you plan to stay married? Mr. Moretti, will this affect your business operations? What does your family think about this relationship? How do you respond to critics who say this marriage is just damage control? Rebecca cut in. That's enough. Thank you all for your time. She stood, signaling the end. Lucien and Vera followed suit, but the reporters weren't done. They surged forward, shouting questions, cameras flashing in their faces. Lucien's security closed in, forming a wall between them and the crowd. He kept his hand on Vera's back, guiding her toward the exit. The questions followed them all the way to the door. Mrs. Moretti, one more question. Mr. Moretti, what about the allegations? Well, Vera, do you regret marrying him? They made it to the car, slid into the back seat, and the door slammed shut, muffling the chaos outside. Vera exhaled, hands shaking. Lucien looked at her. You okay? I don't know. Am I? You did good. I feel like I just fed myself to sharks. You did. But you didn't let them eat you alive. That's what matters. Vera leaned back against the seat, closing her eyes. What happens now? Now we wait. See how the story plays. See who believes you and who doesn't. And if they don't, then we deal with it. The car pulled away from the curb, leaving the chaos behind. But Vera could still feel the weight of all those eyes, all those cameras, all those judgments pressing down on her chest like stones. They think I'm either a victim or a gold digger, she said quietly. There's no middle ground. There never is. People need simple stories, and ours isn't simple. No, it's really not. Lucien reached over and took her hand. For what it's worth, I meant every word I said in there. So did I. I know. He squeezed her hand. That's what scares me. Why? Because now everyone knows you matter to me, and that makes you a target. Vera opened her eyes and looked at him. I've been a target since the day I married you. This doesn't change anything. It changes everything. Before people could only speculate. Now they know for sure. Good, let them know. I'm tired of hiding. Lucien's expression shifted, something between pride and fear. You're braver than I gave you credit for. Or stupider, the jury's still out. He laughed, sharp and surprised. Yeah, maybe both. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Within hours, the press conference was everywhere. Cable news, social media, tabloid websites. The reactions were split. Some people believed Vera. Some called her naive, brainwashed, a victim playing her role. Others called her a gold digger, a willing accomplice, complicit in whatever crimes Lucien had committed. Vera made the mistake of reading the comments once. Elena found her in the library an hour later, eyes red, phone clutched in her hand. Stop, Elena said, taking the phone. Nothing good ever came from reading what strangers think of you. They think I'm lying. Some of them do. Some of them think you're brave. Some of them don't care either way. And none of it changes the reality of your life. It feels like it does. It doesn't. Trust me. Elena sat beside her. I've worked for Lucien for 10 years. I've seen the media tear him apart more times than I can count. And you know what? He's still standing because he doesn't let their opinions dictate his actions. I'm not him. No, you're stronger. Vera looked at her, incredulous. How? Because you walked into a room full of people waiting to crucify you, and you told the truth anyway. That takes guts. Lucien's used to being hated. You're not. And you did it anyway. Vera's eyes stung. I don't feel strong. No one ever does. That's the secret. Elena stood and smoothed her skirt. Now stop reading comments and come have lunch. You haven't eaten all day. I'm not hungry. I don't care. You're eating anyway. Vera followed her to the kitchen, grateful for someone who wouldn't let her spiral. That night, Lucien found Vera on the terrace. She was wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the dark grounds, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. He sat beside her, silent for a moment. Then he said, I read some of the coverage. Don't. Too late. Then you know they think I'm either a liar or an idiot. I know they have opinions. That's all they are. Opinions. Vera pulled the blanket tighter. Do you regret it? Doing the press conference? No, do you? I don't know yet. Lucien leaned back, looking up at the sky. I spent 15 years building a reputation, being feared, being untouchable. And in one afternoon you stood in front of the world and made me look human. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? Is that a complaint? No, it's an observation. Vera turned to look at him. Do you wish I hadn't done it? No, I wish it hadn't been necessary in the first place. But since it was, I'm glad you were the one standing next to me. Why? Because you didn't flinch. You didn't hide. You just stood there and told the truth, even when it would have been easier to let me handle it alone. I wasn't going to let you take the fall by yourself. Most people would have. I'm not most people. Lucien's mouth curved into a faint smile. No, you're not. They sat in silence for a while, the kind that felt comfortable instead of heavy. Then Lucien said, My lawyer called. There's been some blowback from my associates. Some of them think the press conference made me look weak. Vera's stomach dropped. Are you in trouble? Nothing I can't handle. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have got right now. He looked at her. There's going to be a meeting tomorrow night. Some of the higher-ups want to discuss the optics of the marriage, how it affects business, whether it's a liability. They want you to end it. Some of them do. And what do you want? Lucien reached over and took her hand. I want to tell them to go to hell, but I need to know you're ready for what that means. Which is? A fight. Not just with the media, with people inside my organization who think you're a weakness they can exploit. It's going to get ugly, Vera, and it's going to test everything we just said in that press conference. Vera's pulse quickened. Are you asking me if I'm sure? I'm asking if you're ready. She looked down at their joined hands, at the wedding band she'd worn for 2 months that had somehow started to feel like it belonged there. I'm ready, she said. Lucien squeezed her hand. Then let's finish this. The next day dragged. Vera tried to keep busy, reading, swimming, anything to stop thinking about the meeting that night. But her mind kept circling back to it, to the men who would be sitting around that table, judging whether she was worth keeping or worth cutting loose. She'd seen some of them at the wedding. Cold eyes, expensive suits, the kind of men who solved problems with money or violence, whichever was more efficient. And tomorrow night, they'd be deciding her fate. By evening, Vera's nerves were shot. She was in her room, trying to decide what to wear. Did it matter? Should she look intimidating or soft? When Lucien knocked. Come in, she called. He stepped inside, already dressed for the meeting. Dark suit, dark tie, the outfit he wore when he needed to project absolute authority. You don't have to come, he said. Vera turned from the closet. Yes, I do. Vera, we've been through this. They're questioning our marriage. That makes it my fight, too. These men aren't like the reporters. They won't be polite. They won't pull punches. And some of them will say things designed to make you crack. Then I won't crack. Lucien studied her face. You're sure about this? I'm sure that I'm not letting you walk into that room alone to defend a marriage I'm half of. So yes, I'm sure. He crossed to her, cupped her face in his hands. If this goes sideways, it won't. But if it does, you follow Marco out. No arguments, no heroics. Understood? Understood. He kissed her, slow and deliberate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. When he pulled back, his expression was grim. Let's go. The meeting was held in a private room at a restaurant Vera had never heard of, in a part of the city she'd never been to. The kind of place that didn't advertise, that you only knew about if you were supposed to know about it. When they walked in, Vera counted 12 men already seated around a long table, all of them older than Lucien, all of them watching her like she was an exhibit at a zoo. She wore black, a dress Elena had picked out that was elegant but severe, nothing soft or apologetic. She'd pulled her hair back, minimal jewelry, nothing that screamed young or vulnerable. Lucien pulled out a chair for her, and she sat. He remained standing, a deliberate power move that didn't go unnoticed. "Gentlemen," he said, "I believe you all know why we're here." A man at the head of the table, silver-haired, expensive suit, cold eyes, leaned back in his chair. "We're here because your personal life became a public spectacle, and now we're all dealing with the consequences." "The consequences," Lucien said evenly, "are minimal. Some bad press, some uncomfortable questions. Nothing we haven't weathered before." "It's not the press we're worried about," another man said. Vera recognized him from the wedding, thick Boston accent, scar on his jaw. "It's what your marriage signals, that you're distracted, that you've gone soft." Vera's hands clenched in her lap. Lucien's expression didn't change. "I'm not soft, I'm strategic. Vera's presence stabilizes my public image. It makes me look legitimate. That benefits all of you. Or it makes you a target," the silver-haired man said. "You've given your enemies a pressure point, and that puts the rest of us at risk." "Then I'll deal with my enemies. That's my job." "Is it? Because from where we're sitting, it looks like you're more concerned with protecting your wife than protecting the business." Lucien's jaw tightened. "I can do both." "Can you?" "Because the last time someone tried to hurt her, you went scorched earth, burned bridges with the Boston crew, made enemies you didn't need to make. They came after what's mine. I responded accordingly. And that's exactly the problem. You're making emotional decisions." The Boston man leaned forward. "We've all made sacrifices for this organization, Lucien. We've put business first, family second. That's how we survive. But you're putting a girl you've known for 2 months ahead of alliances we've spent years building. That's not what's happening." "Isn't it?" The silver-haired man gestured at Vera. "She's 18 years old, a liability, and you're treating her like she's more important than everything we've built." Vera couldn't stay quiet any longer. She stood. Every eye in the room turned to her. "You're wrong," she said. The silver-haired man raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "You're wrong. About Lucien, about this marriage, about what it means for your business. And what would you know about our business, little girl?" The condescension in his voice made Vera's blood boil, but she kept her voice steady. "Nothing. But I know him, and I know that the reason he's still standing after 15 years in this world is because he's smarter than all of you combined. So if he says this marriage is strategic, maybe you should trust his judgment instead of questioning it." The room went silent. Lucien's hand found her wrist, a gentle warning, but Vera wasn't done. "You think I'm a weakness?" she continued. "Fine. Test that theory. Come after me. See what happens. But I guarantee that whatever you're worried about now will be nothing compared to what Lucien will do to anyone who tries to use me against him." The silver-haired man's eyes narrowed. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." Another man spoke up, younger, maybe mid-40s, wearing glasses. "With all due respect, Mrs. Moretti, you don't understand how this world works. Emotions are liabilities. Attachments are weaknesses. Your husband has built his empire on being ruthless, not sentimental." "And yet here he is," Vera said, "still on top, still making money for all of you, still keeping you out of prison. Maybe his methods work better than yours." The Boston man slammed his hand on the table. "You've got nerve, I'll give you that. But nerve doesn't keep bullets out of your skull. Neither does cowardice. And sitting around a table questioning whether your most successful partner is still useful sounds pretty cowardly to me." Lucien's grip on her wrist tightened, but he didn't pull her down. The silver-haired man studied her for a long moment. Then he looked at Lucien. "She's got a mouth on her." "She does," Lucien said. "She's also right." "About what?" "About trusting my judgment. I've made you all very rich. I've kept heat off your operations. I've cleaned up messes that would have buried any of you. And I've done it while maintaining a level of discipline you'd be wise to respect." He pulled Vera back down into the chair, but stayed standing himself. "Vera stays. The marriage stays. And anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to walk. But understand this. I've built half of what you own. I've cleaned up your messes. I've kept you out of prison and out of graves. So before you question my judgment, remember who's been keeping you alive all these years. The silence stretched. Finally, the man in glasses spoke. And if this marriage does become a liability, if your enemies do use her against you, then I'll handle it the same way I handle everything else, efficiently and permanently. The silver-haired man leaned forward. You're playing a dangerous game, Lucien. I've been playing dangerous games since before half of you were in this business. I'm still here. Another pause. Then the silver-haired man nodded slowly. Fine. But if this blows back on us, it won't, Lucien said. I'll make sure of it. And if it does anyway, then you can say, I told you so at my funeral. But until then, I'd appreciate it if you'd focus on your own operations and let me worry about mine. The Boston man snorted. Ballsy. I'll give you that. It's not ballsy. It's necessary. Lucien looked around the table. Anyone else have concerns they'd like to raise? No one spoke. Good. Then this meeting is over. He offered Vera his hand. She took it, and they walked out of that room with every eye following them. They didn't speak until they were in the car, pulling away from the restaurant. Then Lucien turned to her. That was stupid, he said. Probably. You could have gotten yourself hurt. So could you, daily. And yet here we are. Vera, don't. Don't tell me I shouldn't have defended you. Don't tell me I should have stayed quiet, because I won't apologize for it. Lucien stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. You really don't give a damn, do you? Not particularly. You should. Those men are dangerous. So are you. And I'm still here. He pulled her close, crushing her against his chest. You're going to be the death of me. Good, Vera said, voice muffled against his shirt. At least you won't die alone. He held her tighter. I love you. I don't think I've said that enough. You haven't said it at all. Then I'm saying it now. I love you, Vera, and watching you tear into those bastards was the most terrifying and attractive thing I've ever seen. Vera pulled back just enough to look at him. I love you too, even though you're an idiot who walks into rooms full of people who want him dead on a regular basis. That's my job. Well, your job sucks. Agreed. They sat there in the back of the car, wrapped around each other, while the city lights blurred past the windows. What happens now? Vera asked. Now we go home, and tomorrow we keep living our lives like we always have. And your associates? Will fall in line, or they won't. Either way, we'll handle it. Together? Together. Vera settled against his shoulder, feeling the tension drain out of both of them. They'd survived the press conference. They'd survived the meeting. And somehow they'd come out stronger on the other side. But she knew this wasn't over. Not really. There would be more fights, more challenges, more people trying to tear them apart. But for tonight, they'd won. And that was enough. The weeks following the meeting were tense in a way that felt different from before. The threat wasn't external anymore. No burned gates, no mysterious photographs, no gunmen storming the property. This time the danger was quieter, more insidious. It came in the form of phone calls Lucien took behind closed doors, conversations that ended abruptly when Vera walked into the room, and a tightness around his eyes that never quite went away. She didn't push, not at first. But after 2 weeks of watching him pace the terrace at midnight, smoking cigarettes he didn't even seem to enjoy, she'd had enough. Talk to me, she said one night, finding him in his usual spot overlooking the grounds. About what? About whatever's eating you alive. Lucien took a drag, exhaled slowly. It's nothing you need to worry about. We're past that, Lucien. We decided we were in this together. Remember? He looked at her, and in the dim light from the house, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face. Vincent's making moves. Vera's stomach dropped. Vincent, the man from the wedding reception, the one who'd looked at her like she was a curiosity. What kind of moves? The kind that suggest he's positioning himself to challenge my authority. He's been meeting with people he shouldn't be meeting with, making promises he can't keep, spreading rumors that I've gone soft since the marriage. Are the rumors working? Some people are listening, not many, but enough to be a problem. Vera moved closer, standing beside him at the railing. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Vincent's been with me for 12 years. He's not just some punk I can eliminate without consequences. He has loyalty, connections. Taking him out would start a war I'm not sure I can win cleanly. And if you don't take him out? Then he'll keep pushing until he forces my hand anyway, or until he gets me killed. Lucien stubbed out the cigarette. I'm trapped, Vera. Every option I have leads to blood. Then choose the option that keeps you alive. He looked at her. Even if it means doing something you'll hate me for? I won't hate you for surviving. You say that now. I mean it now, and I'll mean it later. She took his hand. I know who you are, Lucien. I know what you do. And I'm still here. So stop trying to protect me from reality and just tell me what you need. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I need you to trust me, no matter what happens in the next few weeks, no matter what you hear or see. I need you to trust that I'm doing what I have to do. I trust you. Even if it gets ugly? Especially if it gets ugly. He pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. His chest shook with something that might have been a laugh. Yeah, I am. 3 days later, everything exploded. Vera was in the library when Marco burst through the door, face pale. We need to move. Now. She was on her feet instantly. What happened? Vincent made his play. He leaked the full marriage contract to the press. Not just the fact that it existed, everything, the terms, the money, the clauses, all of it. Vera's blood went cold. When? 20 minutes ago. It's already everywhere. Where's Lucien? Handling it. But we need to get you to the safe house until… No! Marco blinked. What? No, I'm not running. Not this time. Mrs. Moretti, where is he, Marco? Marco hesitated, then sighed. His office, but he's not going to want… Vera was already moving. She found Lucien surrounded by papers, phone pressed to his ear, face like thunder. When he saw her, he held up a hand. Wait, and finished the call. I said handle it. I don't care how. Just make it disappear. He hung up and looked at her. You should be with Marco. I should be here. Vera, don't. Don't send me away, not now. Lucien's expression cracked. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. It's bad. Worse than the first leak. The contract had clauses. Things I hoped you'd never have to see written down. Like what? Like the fact that your father had the option to buy you back within the first year for twice what I paid. Like the fact that there was a termination clause if you failed to fulfill certain expectations. Like the fact that I essentially purchased you like livestock and dressed it up as a marriage. Vera's stomach turned. I want to see it. No. Lucien, I said no. His voice was sharp, final. You don't need to see how your father valued you. You don't need to read those terms in black and white. But everyone else is reading them, which is why Vincent needs to die. The words hung in the air between them, blunt and brutal. Vera swallowed. When? Soon. I'm just waiting for confirmation on where he is. And then? And then I'm ending this, permanently. Vera crossed to him, took his face in her hands. Do what you have to do. I'll be here when you get back. Lucien's eyes searched hers. You might not want to be, when you see what they're saying about us. About you. I don't care what they're saying. You should. It's vicious, Vera. They're calling you a prostitute, a victim, a gold digger, every ugly thing you can imagine. Let them. I know the truth. You know the truth. That's all that matters. Lucien pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight it almost hurt. I'm going to fix this. I know. And when I do, I want you to make me a promise. What? That you'll leave. Take the money I set aside for you and disappear. Start over somewhere I can't ruin your life anymore. Vera pulled back, anger flashing hot in her chest. No. Vera, I said no. We've been through this. I'm not leaving. I'm not running. And I'm sure as hell not letting you make that decision for me. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. It became my fight the second my name went on that contract, the second I stood at that press conference, the second I defended you to a room full of men who wanted me dead. So don't you dare try to push me away now. Lucien stared at her, something breaking behind his eyes. Why? Why are you so determined to stay with someone who's destroyed your life? You didn't destroy my life. My father did that. You just gave me a different one. And I'm choosing to keep it. Even if it means being tied to me forever? Especially if it means being tied to you forever. Lucien's composure shattered. He kissed her, desperate and raw, like he was trying to prove something, to her, to himself, she wasn't sure. When they broke apart, both of them were shaking. "I have to go," he said. "I know. Stay inside. Don't answer the door. Don't talk to anyone. I know the rules." He kissed her forehead and left. Vera stood there in his office, surrounded by the evidence of their wrecked privacy, and made a decision. She pulled out her phone and dialed Rebecca, Lucien's lawyer. "Mrs. Moretti," Rebecca answered. "I was just about to call you. I want to make a statement, a real one, not through Lucien, just me. That's not advisable. The media is in a feeding frenzy right now. Anything you say will be twisted. I don't care. Set it up. Today, if possible." "Mrs. Moretti, I'm not asking for permission, Rebecca. I'm telling you what I'm doing. You can help me do it right, or I'll do it alone. Your choice." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Give me 2 hours." Vera did the interview from the library with a single camera and a reporter Rebecca had vetted personally. No studio, no audience. Just Vera, sitting in the chair where she'd spent hours reading, looking directly into the lens. The reporter was a woman in her 40s, professional but not unkind. She started with the obvious question. "Mrs. Moretti, the full details of your marriage contract have now been made public. How do you respond to critics who say this proves you were coerced?" Vera met the camera's gaze. The contract was real. The terms were exactly as brutal as they look on paper. My father signed away my future to settle a debt, and Lucien accepted that deal. Those are facts. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. "So you admit you were coerced?" "I admit I didn't have a choice in how the marriage started, but I do have a choice in how it continues, and I'm choosing to stay." "Even knowing that there was a buyback clause? That your father could have reclaimed you within the first year?" "He didn't, though, did he? He took the money and disappeared. That tells you everything you need to know about who trapped me and who set me free." The reporter leaned forward. "Are you saying Lucien Moretti set you free?" "I'm saying he gave me options I wouldn't have had otherwise. I'm saying he never once used the terms of that contract against me. I'm saying that the man everyone is calling a monster treated me with more respect than my own father did." "But he still bought you." "Yes. And then he let me choose whether to stay. That's the difference." Some would argue that's not enough, that the very act of purchasing another human being is unforgivable. Then they can judge him. I'm not going to. "Why not?" "Because I've seen who he is when no one's watching. I've seen him protect people who couldn't protect themselves. I've seen him make impossible choices and carry the weight of them without complaint. Is he perfect? No. Has he done terrible things? Yes, but he's also the only person who's ever looked at me and seen someone worth saving instead of someone worth selling." The reporter was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "What do you want people to understand about your marriage?" "That it's mine, not theirs, not the media's, not the public's. Mine and Lucien's, and we get to define what it means, regardless of how it started." "And what does it mean to you?" Vera's throat tightened. "It means I found someone who values me more than the price tag my father put on me. It means I found a partner instead of a prison. And it means I'm done apologizing for choosing to stay." The interview aired that night. The reaction was immediate and divided. Some people called Vera brave, some called her brainwashed, some called her a liar covering for an abuser. But more people than Vera expected said they believed her. She was reading through comments, against Elena's advice, when Lucien came home. It was after midnight. He looked exhausted, blood on his knuckles, but alive. Vera was on her feet immediately. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Vincent?" "Taken care of." Vera understood what that meant. She crossed to him and took his hands, examining the damage. "You need to clean these." "Later." "Now." She led him to the bathroom, made him sit on the edge of the tub, and carefully cleaned the blood from his knuckles. He watched her in silence, expression unreadable. "I saw the interview," he said finally. Vera's hands stilled. "And? You shouldn't have done that." "Too late." "Vera, don't. I'm not sorry. I'm not going to hide while everyone tears us apart. If they're going to judge me, they can at least judge me based on the truth." Lucien cupped her face with one hand, the other still in her grip. You keep surprising me. Good. Keeps things interesting. I meant what I said earlier about wanting you to leave. And I meant what I said about not leaving. Vera, no. Listen to me. She set down the antiseptic and looked at him. I know what you did tonight. I know what you had to do. And I'm still here. I'm not running. I'm not scared. And I'm not leaving you. You should be all three of those things. Well, I'm not. So you're stuck with me. Lucien pulled her into his lap, burying his face in her neck. I killed him. Vincent. And the two men who were helping him leak information, I shot them myself. Okay. That doesn't bother you? Should it? Most people would say yes. I'm not most people. And he was trying to destroy you, to destroy us. So no, it doesn't bother me. Lucien's arms tightened around her. What happened to the scared girl I married 3 months ago? She figured out she was stronger than she thought, and she decided to stop apologizing for it. He laughed, rough and tired. I love you, even though I shouldn't, even though it's selfish and dangerous and probably going to get us both killed. I love you too, even though you're a nightmare wrapped in expensive suits and terrible decisions. Fair assessment. They sat there on the bathroom floor holding each other while the rest of the world tried to tear them apart. The next morning, Vera woke to find an envelope on her nightstand. Inside was a single piece of paper, the original marriage contract, the one her father had signed, the one that had started all of this. Across it, in Lucien's handwriting, was one word, void. Beneath it, he'd written, "You're free. Stay because you want to, not because you have to." Vera found him in his office, already working despite the early hour. What is this? She asked, holding up the contract. He glanced at it. Exactly what it looks like. You're voiding the contract? I'm ending the obligation. The marriage stays if you want it to, but the terms that brought you here, those are done. Your father's debt is settled. You're not bound to me by anything except choice now. Vera's throat tightened. When did you do this? Last night, after I got back, had the lawyers draw up the paperwork. It's official as of this morning. And you're just telling me now? I wanted to make sure it was final before I gave you false hope. Vera sat down across from him, still holding the voided contract. Why? Lucien set his pen down. Because I'm tired of keeping you here with chains, legal or otherwise. You've stayed this long. You fought for us. You've stood beside me through hell. You don't owe me anything anymore. What if I want to owe you something? Then that's your choice. But it needs to be a choice, not an obligation. Vera stared at the contract, at the word void scrawled across terms that had controlled her life for months. What if I leave? Then I'll hate it, but I'll survive. And what if I stay? Lucien's expression softened. Then I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it. Vera stood, walked around the desk, and climbed into his lap. I'm staying. You're sure? I'm sure. He pulled her close, and for the first time in months, Vera felt like she could breathe. No contract, no obligation, just choice. The scandal died down slowly. Vincent's death was ruled a gang-related killing, one of many in the city that year. The contract leak faded from the news cycle as newer scandals took its place. And Vera's interview, surprisingly, shifted public opinion. Not completely, not universally, but enough that she could leave the house without reporters camping at the gates. Life settled into something resembling normal, or at least normal for them. Lucien started pulling back from the more violent aspects of his business. He delegated more, trusted his lieutenants to handle things he used to handle personally. He was still feared, still powerful, but he was also home for dinner most nights. Vera enrolled in online classes. Nothing serious at first, just general education credits to see if she could handle college-level work. She could. Better than she expected. Elena told her once, over coffee, "You're not the same girl who showed up here in a borrowed wedding dress." "No, I'm not." "You're stronger, sharper. You hold your own now." "I had to. This world doesn't leave room for weakness." "No, it doesn't." Elena sipped her coffee. "But you found room for happiness anyway. That's rare." Vera thought about that, about the girl she'd been, terrified, trapped, convinced her life was ending. and about the woman she'd become, standing beside one of the most dangerous men in the city, unafraid, unchained, choosing her life instead of having it chosen for her. "Yeah," she said. "I guess I did." 6 months after the contract was voided, Lucien came home with news. "I'm out," he said. Vera looked up from the book she was reading. "Out of what?" "All of it. I've been transitioning power for months. Marco's taking over the distribution network. Rebecca's handling the legal entities. My stake in the clubs and restaurants is being sold. And I'm done." Vera's breath caught. "You're serious?" "I'm serious. I made the last transfer this morning." "And no one's going to come after you?" "They might try, but I've made it very clear that I'm not a threat anymore, and that coming after me means coming after people they don't want to anger. It's as safe as it's ever going to be." Vera set her book down. "So what now?" Lucien pulled an envelope from his jacket. Inside were 2 plane tickets. "Now we leave. Tomorrow morning, new city, clean slate. You can finish your degree. I can figure out what normal people do with their time. And we can stop looking over our shoulders every 5 minutes." Vera stared at the tickets. "You really did it." "I told you I would." "I know, I just didn't think—" Her voice cracked. "I didn't think you'd actually be able to walk away." "I wouldn't have, if it wasn't for you." She looked up at him, eyes stinging. "I don't know how to do normal." "Neither do I, but I'm willing to learn if you are." Vera laughed, watery and overwhelmed. "Okay, yeah, let's do it." He kissed her, and it felt like a promise. They left the next morning before the sun came up. Elena drove them to the airport, eyes red but composed. "You call me if you need anything," she said to Vera. "I will." "And you," Elena said to Lucien, "don't screw this up." "I won't." "You better not. I didn't spend 6 months keeping her alive just for you to ruin it with your emotionally stunted nonsense." Lucien smiled. "I'll do my best." They boarded the plane, and as it lifted off the ground, Vera watched the city shrink below them. The mansion, the life, the empire Lucien had built and then dismantled for her. "Regrets?" Lucien asked. "None. You?" "Not one." Vera leaned her head on his shoulder. "What do you think happens next?" "I have no idea, and that's the best part." They landed in a city neither of them had been to before, somewhere quiet, somewhere they could disappear. Lucien had bought a house under a name that wasn't his, in a neighborhood where no one asked questions. It was smaller than the mansion, normal, the kind of place where people mowed their own lawns and complained about property taxes. Vera loved it immediately. The first few months were strange. Lucien didn't know how to exist without constant threat. He paced. He checked locks obsessively. He'd wake up reaching for guns that weren't there anymore. But slowly, he adjusted. Started sleeping through the night. Started laughing more. Started talking about things that had nothing to do with territory or violence. Vera finished her degree. Got a job at a bookstore that paid terribly but felt like freedom. Made friends who didn't know anything about her past. And every night, she came home to Lucien, who was learning how to cook badly and complain about lawn care and exist like a normal person. One afternoon, about a year into their new life, Vera came home to find him in the kitchen, attempting dinner. The results were questionable. "What is that supposed to be?" she asked. "Chicken, I think." "You think?" Vera laughed, took over the cooking, and they ate on the couch, watching bad television. It was normal, mundane, everything they'd fought for. And it was perfect. 2 years after they'd left, Vera turned 21. Lucien threw her a small party, just neighbors and a few friends from her bookstore job. No one knew who they used to be. That night, after everyone left, Lucien pulled her onto the porch. "I got you something," he said. "You already got me a cake and flowers and that necklace I told you not to buy." "This is different." He handed her a small box. Inside was a new wedding band, simple, elegant, nothing like the first one. "The first ring came with a contract," he said. "This one comes with a choice. Marry me again. For real this time. No obligations, no debt. Just us." Vera's eyes filled. "You're proposing? We're already married." "Legally. Not actually, not in the way that matters. So I'm asking, will you marry me, Vera? Knowing exactly who I am and what I've done, knowing that I'm going to burn dinner 3 times a week and forget to take out the trash, knowing that I'm still figuring out how to be a normal person?" "Yes," Vera said, laughing through tears. Yes, you idiot. Of course, yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and they stood there on the porch, wrapped around each other, while the neighborhood settled into quiet around them. 3 years after they'd left the city, Vera graduated with her master's degree in literature. Lucien was in the audience, clapping louder than anyone, looking absurdly proud. Afterward, they went to dinner at a restaurant that didn't require reservations. I'm thinking about writing, Vera said. Writing what? Fiction. Stories about people who make impossible choices and survive them anyway. You'd be good at that. You think? I know. He reached across the table. You've spent 3 years figuring out who you are outside of everything that happened. I think it's time you told that story. Vera squeezed his hand. What about you? What's next for the reformed crime lord? I'm opening a bookstore. Already signed the lease. You're kidding. I'm not. Vera laughed. You're unbelievable. You married me. Best decision I ever made. And she meant it. Because somewhere between the terror and the violence and the impossible choices, they'd built something real. Something that wasn't defined by contracts or obligations or a world that had tried to destroy them both. They'd built a partnership, a life, a love that wasn't perfect or easy, but was entirely theirs. Vera had started as a girl who thought her life was ending at an altar. And she'd become a woman who understood that the worst things that happen to you are sometimes just the beginning of something better. That survival and living are two different things, but you can't have one without the other. That power isn't something you're born with. It's something you claim piece by piece, choice by choice. And that real love isn't about being saved. It's about finding someone who sees you at your worst and chooses to stay. Someone who gives you space to become who you're meant to be, then stands beside you while you figure it out. Lucien had given her that, and in return, she'd given him something he never thought he'd have, a reason to leave the darkness behind. Years later, when people asked how she'd ended up married to a man like Lucien Moretti, Vera would smile and give the simplest answer. I chose him, and he chose me. Everything else is just details. And it was true, because at the end of the day, that's all that mattered. Not how it started, not what it looked like from the outside, just the choice they made every single day to keep choosing each other. That was the story, the only one that mattered. Vera had learned something important in those years of transformation, that freedom isn't the absence of chains, it's the presence of choice. She'd been chained by her father's debt, by a contract, by circumstances beyond her control. But she'd also been given choices along the way. Small ones at first, whether to fight or accept. Whether to see Lucien as a captor or a complicated man trying to do right by an impossible situation. Whether to run when given the chance, or stay and see what they could build together. Every choice had led her here. To a quiet house in a quiet neighborhood with a man who'd once been the most feared person in the city and was now arguing with the neighbor about lawn fertilizer. To a life that was hers, completely and utterly, with no strings attached except the ones she chose to keep. That was what made it all worthwhile. Not the mansion or the money or even the safety, just the simple, profound freedom of choosing her own life. And she chose this one every single day.